everyone. Thank you for joining us today. We're excited to be covering one of our newest features, the RevLoss summary for Amazon. And I believe it's applicable for Kroger as well now. If not, it will be very, very soon. So real quick, I do want to introduce you to our host today. So Carter, if you don't mind, go ahead and clicking over to that next slide. So my name is Matt Willingham. I am our manager of customer success, overseeing our SMB team, so small and mid-sized businesses. Some of you have probably met me on customer calls. I now kind of oversee that customer success management team. Joining me today is Carter King, and I'll let Carter share a little bit about himself.
Hey everyone, thanks Matt. Yeah, Carter King. I'm a senior product manager here at SupplyPike. Been here for going on 6 years, so kind of since the beginning and the early days. Have worked on several products throughout the years. I've probably been on some calls with some of you as well. But kind of newest product that I've been working on is this RevLoss summary. So got some. We've had it out for about a year, but got some exciting updates. So looking forward to giving you an overview today.
Awesome. Thank you, Carter. So before we get started, I'd like to lay out the agenda for today. So we're going to be talking about enhanced high-level visibility into your organizational RevLoss. And then Carter's going to run us through a demo of these newest executive dashboards and kind of show off the new shiny features and how they work and how they can help you. We will have time for questions and any discussions that you guys would like to talk through at the end, but don't feel like you have to wait until the end. There is a Q&A button on your Zoom toolbar there. Feel free to plop your questions in there. If we're able to answer it as we go, we absolutely will do so. If we're not able to answer it kind of as we go along, we'll bring that up during that Q&A period at the end. Some common questions. Will we get a copy of the slide deck? Yes. So we will send you a copy both of the slide deck and the recording to your inbox, whatever email you use to register for today's webinar. That's going to come to that inbox typically in about 3 to 4 business days. And the best way to ask a question, like I mentioned, that Q&A tab in Zoom. If you just scroll over your screen there with the Zoom window pulled up, there should be an icon bar that pops up, and there should be a Q&A labeled icon there, right kind of in the middle of it. So feel free to use that, engage with us. We love to see your comments. We love to get your questions, and we want to make sure that we don't want you to leave with questions about how does this work. We want to be able to comprehensively answer those. So now I'm going to turn it over to Carter, and Carter, please take us away on a journey into RevLoss.
Yeah, thanks Matt. So yeah, he kind of alluded to it. RevLoss is one of our newer features, probably, or one of the bigger, newer features, if you will. It's kind of a fully dedicated app that you can see in SupplyPike. Just quick backstory or history of this product. So we did a lot of research into kind of, what does that executive level view of revenue loss at a retailer look like? And what are those important metrics to track? And what are some of the insights that you can get out of those? That happened early last year, a lot of research. We launched it for Walmart, kind of a first iteration of it around this time. Maybe it was a little later, kind of May or so of last year. And then got a lot of feedback from you all, from customers, added some new features, and have since rolled out support for Target. For Amazon. And actually, as of yesterday, which Matt, I think, was unsure even if we had it, but yeah, as of yesterday, we now have Kroger as well. The plan is for Target to roll out in the next few weeks. And then as SupplyPike adds capabilities for additional retailers like Home Depot, coming next month or so, we'll roll out support for those kind of throughout this year as well. With that said, I think we can dive into it. And again, a bit of backstory. So as you all know, SupplyPike has, really had a lot of focus on deduction management. Kind of all of our retailer specific applications with the deductions and compliance features There are some analytics tools. There are some kind of overviews of deductions, but it's all at a single vendor level. And it's all, really more kind of transactional or transaction focused on individual deductions and individual items of revenue loss, and disputing those and researching individual deductions and opening up the shipping documents and looking at invoices and POs and tools to efficiently dispute individual pieces. And then obviously kind of research them if they get kicked back, and deciding if you want to redispute or archive or kind of just move along. But with the RevLoss summary, really kind of took a step back and wanted to try and tie all of that together. So all of those individual transactions across all of your vendor numbers and multiple retailers, can we roll all that up and kind of tell the story at that really high level of how much does it cost to do business with a retailer? So that is kind of the idea around it. And some of the insights that you're kind of benefits of looking at that at that higher level is trying to spot trends and potentially opportunities to make some systemic changes within your business and implement some new processes and things like that. As we were doing a lot of this research and as customers have come on board, we know that you guys are doing some of this and have been doing some of this already. But we found that it's really time consuming to kind of roll that, to get all of the data out at that transactional level and then roll it up in a meaningful way. So difficult to do within a single retailer, really, really hard to do across retailers, right? Because there is no kind of standard revenue loss or standard deduction system across retailers. So that was, again, the goal here is kind of provide that standardized view so you can view multiple lines of business kind of within one dashboard. So before we kind of dive into each of the different pieces of functionality within this app, I wanted to give kind of an overview of some of the terms that we use on this dashboard that you probably won't find in other pieces of SupplyPike. So we'll start with gross revenue. This is basically everything that you have invoiced for to a retailer, to a for a specific vendor number. And this would be limited to basically invoices that have been paid, either paid in full, partially paid, or completely deducted. That's when we show it here. So invoices that have not yet been paid, they won't show. And you may notice things like in the very most recent months where we've got, February is a complete month, but depending on your payment terms within a retailer, it may be 30, 60, even 90 days before you start seeing that revenue number start to show up in this dashboard. Next up is net total, and you'll see that here. And that is essentially gross revenue minus any deductions or fines that have not been paid back. That's your net total number. So this is like what you were actually paid. So gross revenue, you can think of what you expected to be paid. Net total, what you were actually paid.
So Carter, does that update automatically as things get repaid?
Yeah, great question. It does. So this dashboard updates once a week. So not quite as frequently as our individual deductions and compliance apps. The idea there is, this data just doesn't change quite as frequently, and you're usually looking at a kind of an older time frame that is a bit more settled. But yes, as things get disputed and ultimately paid back, you'll see these numbers change. And then finally, just the term RevLoss. I think it is hopefully pretty self-explanatory, but just a shortened revenue loss, a term for that, and something that we use a lot here internally and when we're speaking with customers. Kind of just a term that encompasses all AP deductions and any AR fines that you may be getting across retailers. Maybe important to call out here, this is also limited to the types of revenue loss that SupplyPike supports today. So as you know, I think we have a vast majority of them covered. There are some things like the new collect fuel charge program, and post audits and things like that, things that aren't supported in our individual deductions and compliance apps that would not be included here. So not every possible type of revenue loss, but the vast majority of them. Another part that I want to cover just to kind of set the stage here that may help you understand all of these different metrics. Just kind of the timing of RevLoss, or and how it can vary from retailer to retailer and things like that. So as you guys know, it can kind of span multiple months, and especially depending on how long it's taking a retailer to review and ultimately pay back those disputes. So just a quick example here, you could ship a PO and invoice for it in December. You could receive a deduction against that invoice in January, dispute it in February, and ultimately have it paid back in March. So you can see, that is actually a pretty quick example. But you can see one single deduction or item of revenue loss can kind of span 4 months before it's kind of reached a final state. So all that to say, you'll see a lot of this data is kind of time series and grouped by month. We did a lot of research into, what date to use to kind of apply these both revenue and revenue loss to a specific month. And for this specific kind of bird's eye executive level view, we went with the original invoice date. So everything will be tied back. All 4 of those kind of milestones that I mentioned, the actual original invoice, the deduction, the dispute, and the repayment will ultimately be tied back to that original invoice. So, as a quick example here, March of 2023, this is everything that was invoiced and ultimately paid on that invoice. So even if you disputed it in a later month and ultimately had it paid back in an even later month, all of that data will fall back into the original invoice date. And again, we thought that lended well to the idea of how much does it cost to do business with a given retailer. Again, what was I expected to be paid and what was I actually paid? With that said, I think there is a lot of valid analysis that goes on. I know, Matt, with you working with customers, and I've been spending a lot of time on reporting. I think it makes sense for other use cases to look at it using other dates, especially kind of maybe more at that like in the weeds day-to-day level. How much am I disputing in a given month? How much is ultimately being paid back? We're working on some tools, some more analytical tools to kind of to cover some of those use cases as well. But wanted to call out on this specific dashboard, everything's based on the invoice date. Right, so there, I think we can jump into some of the specific functionality of this dashboard. So we'll start at the very top. You'll see you have a time filter. We've got kind of a combination of predefined, what Walmart calls fuzzy dates, kind of those rolling periods, where like, last quarter today would be looking at Q4 of 2023. In a few weeks, when we get into April, last quarter would be Q1 of 2024, and that'll automatically update. So just depending on the day that you're looking at this dashboard and the time that you have selected will be what those what's displayed there.
And when they're looking at quarters, because some retailers can report quarters a little bit wonky, Walmart as an example, is that based on calendar quarters or the retailer specific quarters?
Yeah, great question. It is based on kind of the normal standard calendar, so not a Walmart calendar or Amazon calendar. So we're looking starting January, ending December. But that is a great segue. A lot of the feedback was, the retailer quarter is different, or maybe my internal company fiscal calendar is different. So these standard dates don't always make sense. So with that feedback, we actually did implement kind of a custom month selector. So as an example, I know that Walmart calendar runs from February to January. So if we wanted to look at that, maybe if you were presenting some of this data to Walmart and wanted to show it to them using their fiscal calendar, can totally do that using that custom date selector. Next up, and kind of brand new functionality and something we're really excited about here at SupplyPike, is the ability to look across retailers and even within retailers, multiple vendor numbers. So I've got just kind of some silly names here, but generally how the data is laid out for our customer is by vendor number. So if you have multiple lines of business within Walmart, you would see those here, and this would be aligned directly with what you would see in our deductions app, where you kind of have to select one vendor number at a time. Within this dashboard, you can actually view multiple, and you can kind of quickly, if you want to just look at your Walmart business or a subset of your Walmart business, you can really easily do that. Or maybe if you have, this line of business kind of aligns with this line of business at Amazon, just making it really easy to kind of do all of that.
When you have multiple retailers or multiple business units within a given retailer selected, is there a way to distinguish or break out those retailers on the graph?
There's not currently. It is something that I expect we'll get a lot of feedback for, and hoping that we can hear kind of those use cases. Right now, it is all kind of lumped in together. So we're seeing there's no way necessarily to say that, of this $1.08 million of RevLoss, 800K came from Walmart and 100 from Kroger. Currently, it's all kind of lumped in together. We have some ideas and have been toying around with being able to break it out or see which retailer might be driving one metric or the other, but currently no distinction on the graphs themselves.
So thank you. And I just want to jump in and point out the fact that we have this rollout it's a direct result of your guys' feedback. We initially did the RevLoss summary for Walmart broken out at the 6-digit vendor ID level. So that global rollup is a direct result of you all, the people who are using it, requesting it. So please, any feedback that you have, please share that with us. We love it. We take that, we use it. We use that to make the products better for you.
Yeah, absolutely. All right. The other, again, kind of a new feature or functionality based directly on the feedback that we heard from you guys. The ability to filter out different categories of revenue loss. So I'm sure, as you guys know, like within Walmart, there's I think over 100 different codes just for deductions alone. And especially at this level, maybe at any level, it doesn't make sense to analyze a single code. So we tried to roll these up into kind of generic categories. So these are the default categories. We worked with a lot of suppliers trying to figure out, what level of granularity makes sense, or what types of categories make sense. So things like compliance, that would directly correlate to OTIF and SQEP at Walmart, contractual co-ops at Amazon. And then maybe, hopefully this one makes sense. I feel like a lot of suppliers use this term, others may not. OS&D stands for overages, shortages, and damages. So this is going to be generally your big bucket here, at least really across retailers, but especially at Walmart. Yeah, so if you wanted to dig in and look at just the OS&D stuff, you can pretty quickly filter everything else out and see how that changes and how that's driving things. Oh, last piece there would be, so yeah, we provided you with a list of default categories, but we also allow you to customize these, right? We know that not everybody categorizes things the same way. Some people want to see those damages broken out of overages, shortages, and damages. So you can see our current default, like for the individual codes or charge types at a specific retailer, how they're mapped. You can remap them if you want. And I think what's really cool is you can create your own categories and map them to those. So in that example, if you wanted to create a new category just for damages, give it a name, select whichever codes you think makes sense to fit in there. And, just as a quick example, choose a couple, add category, and everything gets remapped that way. All of these changes are kind of set at a company level. So if one person in your company goes in and makes those changes, it will be reflected on everyone within that company's dashboard. Cool. So now we can kind of jump into the different metrics displayed here. So start with RevLoss by dollar. This is, I've kind of already explained a little bit about gross revenue, net rev loss, and net total, but the idea here is showing, for a month, again, how much did I invoice for, how much did I expect to get paid, and how much did I actually get paid? So comparing revenue loss to revenue, or another way to say revenue is sales to a specific retailer. And by sales, I mean sales from a CPG or supplier to a retailer, not the actual retail sales of to a retail, to like an individual shopper. Again, you'll see them broken out by month. You'll also see what we're calling these KPIs. So this is a roll up of the entire time period that you have selected. What was the invoice? What was the net rev loss and net total? Do want to call out here as well, net rev loss does account for things that have been paid back. So, the day that you get a deduction, it counts as net rev loss. If and when that deduction gets disputed and paid back, your net rev loss will shrink and your net total will increase. So these numbers will change over time, and especially in these more recent months, but it could be, any month, depending on when it was disputed or how long it took for the retailer to review and ultimately pay that back. Rev loss by percent of gross revenue, kind of just a different way to look at this same data. Here we're just looking at a percentage of the gross revenue. So again, here we're saying, and this is just for that OS&D for these demo companies across all three of those retailers, my net rev loss rate 0.6%. So the retailer did not pay 0.6% of all of my invoices. And if we set these categories back up to everything, we'll see a much bigger number. And again, you may need to build in a bit of buffer time for these more recent months, but hopefully you're seeing this number go down. So you're working with your CSMs, your customer success team here at SupplyPike, using this dashboard to hopefully kind of find opportunities, make some changes within your business to prevent these fines from happening in the first place, and staying on top of those disputes and payments, and ultimately seeing this rev loss rate go down. So those first two really kind of focused on looking at revenue loss compared to sales. This third graph, disputed and approved gross rev loss, this is really just looking at deductions and fines. So no sales or revenue data here. And I'm gonna look at, again, just the shortages. Well, actually, let's look at everything except contractual. That was kind of the main use case that we heard, especially on this graph. in the request for being able to filter out categories. Some RevLoss is expected. So the contractual one, a lot of those are agreed upon and kind of expected revenue loss and generally valid. So things like co-ops at Amazon, still disputable, potentially invalid, but generally not. And maybe it doesn't make sense to kind of view that alongside, everything else that was maybe unexpected revenue loss. So pretty straightforward graph here, basically showing, again, all grouped by invoices. How many deductions and fines did I get? How much was I able to dispute? And in green here, how much was actually paid back or recovered? This graph has the functionality to actually kind of toggle between dollars, which is the view that we're seeing right now, or percent. So here we can say, of all of the deduction dollars received from invoices in May, I disputed 72% of them, recovered 47%. One other thing, I know I keep harping on it, but this can change over time as well, right? Like the difference that 28% difference there between disputed and recovered, a lot of that may still be pending. It may not have reached a final state. So we could see that recovered number go up and get closer to that 72%.
And both of those numbers are in relation to the total number of the invoices, right? So that 47% of recovery is you've recovered 40% of your total invoice amount, not 47% of what was disputed. Is that correct?
No, it is actually not of the dispute, but of the total deduction. So if we look here, got $255,000 of deductions and fines, disputed 184K, paid back 120. And if you ever are curious or kind of as you get to using this dashboard and don't quite remember, each of these metrics has a little tooltip here, as well as a link out to a more kind of thorough help article explaining that. All right, keep moving along here. RevLoss by category. And here I'll jump up and kind of include all categories so we can see them here. You can see what is driving, where is the bulk of my RevLoss coming from across the entire time range. I've got an Amazon supplier selected. So again, I know a lot of this is coming from Amazon co-ops. But if you wanted to, again, just look at Walmart maybe. There we go. You can see kind of a more normal picture for a Walmart supplier with the vast majority, no, not vast. We've got a big chunk in OS&D. So those overages, shortages, and damages, pretty big chunk in returns as well. What's comparing these two bars are comparing would be the gross rev loss. So total deductions received, and then the net rev loss. So total deductions received minus anything that was paid back. Rev loss by category by status is just kind of a final breakdown that shows you by category. So those categories that we've already kind of touched on, the amount of dollars remaining in each of these kind of dispute statuses. So stick with this OS&D. We've got 108K that has not yet been disputed. So you might see that and jump over to the deductions app and kind of see what that is. Was it something that you chose not to dispute because you think it might be valid? Or is this just an opportunity and maybe you don't have all of the required proof documentation attached and it just hasn't auto disputed yet? So an opportunity to go out and work with your team to get all of that required documentation attached and ultimately disputed. We can also see will not dispute. So things that you've kind of archived out of your view of deductions. Pending. I think this one is particularly a valuable view or number to look at. So this is things that you have disputed that have not reached a final state yet. Something you might use this for is kind of forecasting out, future cash flow. We know we've got 340K of shortages pending. And it obviously varies company to company, but if we're seeing an 85+% approval rate on those shortages, we know we've probably got like 250+K coming back to us in the next month or two. So something you can report on to your team, or give your accounting team kind of a heads up that, here's hasn't been approved or recovered yet, but likely to be approved and recovered in the next few months. And then, approved, denied, pretty self-explanatory there. You can see status totals, so everything that's not disputed, everything that's been approved, and then for each category, kind of the total that's making it up there.
And if they update their category mappings, that updates the data across the entirety of the summary page, not just in one category, right?
Yeah, that's exactly right. So if you broke out code 25s from Walmart into a new category, you would see that new category here. You'd see this OS and D number shrink because it has now been attributed to this new category that you created. Right. I think that kind of wraps up my presentation, so we can open it up to any questions that have come in.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, if there are any questions, please pop those in the Q of A, Q and A, not Q of A. Geez, Matt. Pop those in the Q of A. Carter and I can kind of hang out for a little bit to answer those. I do want to review some of our support resources with you guys. So if you're not familiar, we do have a help center available that contains a lot of really, really well detailed information on all of SupplyPike's applications and the retailers that we support. It's available at help.supplypike.com, and I highly recommend checking it out. Many of you may be familiar with the support chat function, which is available to you in the bottom right-hand corner of your screen when you're in the SupplyPike platform. So if you're ever working in the app and you have a question about something that you're seeing or not seeing, or a response that you got from a retailer, and you're like, what does that mean? Please use that chat function that'll connect you with one of our live support associates. They are available Monday through Friday, 8 a.m. to 5 p.m. Central Time, excluding federal holidays. But they are very knowledgeable. They're very quick about getting back to you. And we're all here to support your goal of minimizing your revenue loss with these retailers. You can also email us at support@supplypike.com. And we also highly, highly, highly encourage you to follow Supplier Wiki to get all sorts of great information and helpful resources for each of the retailers that we support. Again, Carter and I are going to hang out for a few more minutes to answer any questions that may come up, or, talk about whatever you guys want to talk about. We truly appreciate you all attending today. Please reach out if there's anything that we can help with in the future. Get in touch with your customer success manager, or just reach out to SupplyPike in general. We want to make sure that you're taken care of. But thank you all so much, and I hope you have a wonderful day, and good luck on your March Madness brackets.
And I guess maybe while we're waiting here, have a few more minutes. There's kind of a shameless plug for some new features coming out. I mentioned kind of at the beginning, hoping to have support for Target in the next few weeks. And then things that we're researching and really looking to get feedback on. Would love to hear from you all. Do you want to see some kind of visual breakdown of the different retailers or vendor numbers on the charts? I think one other thing that we are moving forward with, but still kind of gathering feedback as well, any kind of export functionality that you guys are looking for, and specifically around, I guess, the specifics of, do you want that as a PDF or some kind of presentation, images? Do you want the raw data behind these numbers in something like a spreadsheet? So yeah, if you have any thoughts or comments there, would love to hear them.
I think one of these slides might have our contact information on it somewhere, maybe the next one or the one prior to this. There we go. If you guys do think of any questions, I'm not seeing anything in the chat, feel free to reach out to either Carter or myself, or both of us. We're happy to follow up with you guys with anything and everything under the sun. and particularly related to the RevLoss summary. Yeah, I probably can't help you like name a dog or something, but appreciate you guys all joining us today, and I hope everybody has a terrific Thursday.